to the SecurityLah podcast.
A lot of personal data of 380,000 were being allegedly sold on the data sharing forum. So, does anyone have any information on this?
So it's pretty much the same thing. For now, they say it's speculation. There is around 380,000 records that have been compromised. The records contain name, email address, hashed password, date of birth, full address, including city, postcode, and mobile number. As per ePay, they came up with a notice saying that they are looking into it. There is a media release for this. And it says that it is isolated to the ePay online reload and payment collection system, which they call as EVE. So that's about it.
But what is ePay actually? So I'm reading here that it's part of a solution of the GHL group of companies. So what I know about GHL is that they are, correct me if I'm wrong, a payment gateway. So what that means is that they enable online transactions. But ePay itself is a part of this?
Seems like it, because GHL actually does quite a number of things. They supply merchant terminals, the terminals where you plug in your credit debit card, put in your PIN number and all that. So they supply those devices. I know they also have a payment gateway for applications to integrate so that they can process payment from the gateway. I guess this is the other one, which is the EVE. I'm not particularly familiar with all the systems they have, so it really depends on how they have the system plugged in.
So it looks, and I could be wrong, but it looks like it's a software solution that does not require any kind of hardware. So if there was a breach that had happened, as seemed to be indicated by the detection of information being sold on the dark web, where do you think was the likely point of vulnerability that enabled the breach to happen?
Well, we won't really know unless if the organization that owns the system is actually able to say, yeah, we found a bug in the system, and as a result, this data got breached. We can be certain that only this number of records were leaked. So I guess it stops there. So I don't think anyone can identify that unless if someone goes scanning their system, finds out there's a loophole or a vulnerability, and it gets published out in the open.
Has there been an official response from them?
There is. I believe they came up with a press release on related to the breach. Nothing so detailed about it. The only thing that they seem to say that it's limited, the allegations are limited to only ePay online reload and bill payment collection system, EVE, as what Nigel said earlier. My opinion is that for a company that seems that they're not sure whether it's them that's being breached, they seem to be accurately certain it's from what system. Kind of odd.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like if you don't know you're being breached, how would you know which system got hacked? It could be a front proxy system, it can be an intermediary, or it can be your CDN, it can be anywhere. So for me, it's rather odd that they were able to pinpoint to a particular system. So it's either they know their architecture extremely well, or I don't know, something probably went down south. And they went ahead and said that, EVE users should not click on unverified email links, and you need to update your credentials, but only do so in our official website. The common practice for breaches, or if you suspect breaches, is that normally the organization will send a blast out to all of their customers individually and say, hey, we suspect that something may be wrong with your credentials. Can you just please go in and change your password? But using a press release to do this, there's going to be a lot of customers who's left out, because they wouldn't have any clue whether they're actually a customer of EVE or not. Now, we don't know how this application works. It may be part of a third-party system. Say, for example, if I come up with a system called sayabayarbill.com, and I may use this EVE system in the back end. So as a customer of sayabayarbill.com, I may not know that I will have to change my credentials because it's using this particular back end of a system. You know, if you ask me, the better approach would be to just notify everyone either via email or whichever channel that they feel suitable, and inform the users, please do something about it. You know what's startling is that the first thing I did when I saw this news was I went to their website. Practically nothing. It's just as if that nothing happened. So if you go to the website right now, there's no notification. There's nothing there that says that something wrong has happened and I need to take action. Because if I was a customer and I'm using this system, I would go to the website and I'll find that, hey, there's a breach notification and I need to do this, but practically nothing on the website.
Perhaps it's as what you said, which is like they do not know who exactly has been impacted by this, because the solution or the offensive piece of solution that has been breached is at a part where it impacts a lot of people. Maybe the Malaysian base of people who pay their bills online.
But that's the interesting thing. If you notice, based on the metadata that they showed, it's first name, last name, email, password, designation, fine, date of birth, nationality, country ID, kind of odd, you know. It's like, yeah, it's sounds to me that it's kind of some sort of a sign up page, and you're collecting my date of birth so that you give me a free bill payment on my birthday. And why do you need nationality? If I'm just paying my bill, unless the bills are tagged to nationality and there's a special rebate code, maybe. But you know, it's Malaysia, and I think everybody gets charged pretty much the same way, or you just pay the amount that's put into the bill.
No, my experiences with bill payment is via my online banking.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. I pay my bills. I don't put my nationality in there.
Yeah.
I just say bill X. I pay 120 ringgit and I pay now. Boom. And it gets paid. So I'm surprised as to why you have so much of all this additional data. You know, do they really need it? I don't know.
So could it mean that the part that got breached is actually a bank? The system in a bank got breached. That's why all this information is there as well.
I doubt it's a bank, for the simple reason because if this is a platform, these are the kind of stuff that everyone would ask for. You know, what do you do? Where do you work as? What's your date of birth? It can be anyone. I don't, from my knowledge, the banks won't be using this platform. They'll have their own platforms. They don't need a third party to do the payment system. I mean, they connect directly to the likes of Swift, Visa, MasterCard. And in fact, these kind of people like ePay, they would need a bank as a clearinghouse because they don't have the license to do it. The banks have the license to do it. So these these payment hubs would require back-end connectivity to the bank for the payment to go through. So for example, if you're going to make a bill payment, you need to use JomPay today, right? So if you're using JomPay, you have to go back to PayNet because PayNet is where you process all your bills and all that. So in that case, you are still a third-party organization that's connecting outside of the financial into the inner core of the financial sector.
Over last year, I think we have seen many cases of data leaks due to breaches. Has there been a formalized best practice that all entities can follow in response to this?
From what I know, there is no formal requirement for anyone to even say that I got breached. I mean, if you look in the US, SEC makes a mandatory requirement that if you have a material breach, you are required to disclose it and you are required to put it as part of your filing. Example would be FireEye. And if you looked at the statement they made, right at the bottom of the statement, they say this statement is made in line with SEC filing requirements, requirement number blah, and all that. So if you have any questions, please contact our industry relations or our stakeholder relationship department. From what I see in Malaysia, if you get breached, you get breached. You don't have to tell anyone. And that's kind of scary because customer data goes out. And once it goes out, no one knows. So for example, the only closest legal requirement I can find would be the PDPA, which is the Personal Data Protection Act. And most likely, unless if it becomes well known, there's nothing to say anything about it. So for one example would be the great Malaysian telco breach, which was where you had millions of records published and leaked out, which eventually led to a company that was responsible to do EIR system for the Malaysian telcos. So in that instance, if you see what's happening, the regulatory framework is not there. There's so many other best practices that are there, but there's nothing that mandates for an organization to go in and report and say, I've been breached, please take note. If you're one of our customers, please do something to take care of your accounts.
And even if they do notify users, then what are the chances that the notification is done in a timely manner?
No clue, because a breach can happen anywhere at any time. And the only point that you probably know that a breach has occurred is if, number one, someone puts out the data out to the internet and says, see, I have X million number of records of this particular organization. Or number two, you've identified that someone's been in your system. You've been proactively looking at red teaming, adversarial threat emulation, and you've seen that, hey, I think someone is in the network. You boot them out. Then you think that, oh, they've accessed these systems based on the logs that we're seeing. So most likely this subset of data may have been leaked. So again, I'm quoting the example of FireEye. They were able to say that based on the movements of the attacker, they've identified that the attackers have a copy of their red team tools. Hence, they came out with a notification to say our red team tools are out. We want you to know how to detect it if it's used in your environment. These are the indicators of compromise. These are indicators of exposure. Please monitor this in your network. And they release the YARA rules and Sigma rules.
So for this particular incident, which has happened with ePay and GHL, whether I'm a victim or not, what's the next thing that I can do to ensure that I remain safe, or it doesn't escalate?
The first thing is use unique passwords for all of your sites. So if you have 5 websites or 5 services that you use different passwords. Because the problem we see today with breaches is that the same password is used for everything. So for example, if someone was using ePay, the passwords gets breached. The attackers now publish, this is your email address and this is your password. So what most likely will happen is that someone who gets access to the data is going to try that same email address and password on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and all other sites, may even include your banking sites. So then what happens is that if people were using the same passwords, they are bound to be breached. So the first thing is, as far as passwords are concerned, use unique passwords. Now, most people don't have the ability of having random passwords in their heads. So another alternative would be to use a system like a password manager. So you don't have to remember what passwords you put in. You have a system that safe keeps your password. And your passwords can be unique, can be long, can be 20 characters, 100 characters. and you really don't have to remember. So what's important is make sure you don't reuse your passwords. And in fact, some of the password managers have a little bit of capability of dark web monitoring. So a service that I use actually informs me this particular password has been compromised. And since you reuse this password in another 20 sites, these 20 sites may be subject to compromise. So why don't you go in and change it? So it gives you a little bit of idea of what kind of exposure you have as far as your passwords are concerned and how you can mitigate that more effectively.
Again, coming back to ePay, so there is some speculation saying that this particular data may have already been published before. And if you look at some of this information, it probably published somewhere in March 2020. So it's kind of, or was it? Yeah, I believe it is March. So if this is the case that, the same data set that was published before, would it be, would EP actually know that they were breached in the past, or is it likely that, they are not aware of it?
Enjoying the show so far? Subscribe now so that you don't miss out on the latest episode. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many other platforms. Visit podcast.securitylah.asia to get the links to subscribe.
I tried Googling on ePay and whether there was any breach that was announced. And for the like of me, I can't find anything anywhere else like a media coverage or any of those things to say that ePay was aware that they were already breached. So based on a posting by SecurityLah is an organization that specializes on dark web monitoring and threat intelligence. They mentioned that ePay user database was leaked on March 2nd, 2020, and as well as August 5th, 2020. And the latest posting by Bank Security seems to indicate that they are leaking the same set of information. So most likely, threat actor 1 got access to the data, sold it in March. Threat actor 2 tries to resell it in August, and maybe threat actor 2 or threat actor 3 is now selling the same data on dark web again in February. So as going back to what you said, Nigel, to be honest, there's nothing out there in the internet that says that ePay is aware of it. And I'm not sure if any of the users have gotten any information. So it seems to me that they probably may not know, or maybe they know, but it's anybody's guess what was done with that information. And with the lack of information, the Malaysian news kind of indicates to me that probably nothing was put out there to say that ePay customers, please take note. You may have this data that's been published about you, your personal information, your personal details, your passwords. So it's rather alarming because it seems to be that they only seem to know about it very recently.
Maybe it's a cover-up. What do you think?
You and your conspiracy theories. Well, maybe not. But then we do know that Malaysia has this, I won't say behavior, but I'd say more of a habit. When something breaks, they try their best not to put it out. They love making statements about things that are positive, but if you notice that when something breaks, they do their best not to share that information out. And I guess that's quite counterproductive for a simple reason is that everyone, irrespective whatever size of organization you are, whatever industry you are bound to face these kind of issues. And the more we share this information, the more we look at who are the threat actors and we take preventive steps that would help to stem the problem. It doesn't help if you keep all this information to yourself it's bound to hit everyone else. You know, today it may be ePay, tomorrow it may be another payment gateway, or maybe another manufacturer, or a telco, or a financial institution. It doesn't help being secretive about this. The bad guys are really good at sharing information. If you look at some of the APT groups, they share code, they share information, they work together really well. Organized crime, they work together really well. Unfortunately, the good guys like you, me, and everyone else, we seem to be taking the opposite approach, which is keeping everything to ourselves and not sharing it. If indeed these people were breached and something happened, the best thing that could have done is, yes, we had these issues. These are the indicators of compromise. This is who are the people who we suspect had had problems or were responsible for this, and we'd like to see it being taken action. It starts with one person raising their hand and say, we've been breached. These are the IP addresses we saw. These are the malware hashes. Start with one person, and then you'll find that everybody starts raising their hand and say, yeah, we saw the same kind of IP addresses. We saw them accessing our SQL server. Something is wrong. We need help. Because as long as these kind of issues are kept quiet, the bad guys will continue to win. Sharing is the only way forward. And for all you know, ePay themselves would have benefited from sharing this information if someone earlier had a similar breach and would have shared that information and say, hey guys, we see this IP address, do something about it. And if ePay had seen that information and had blocked it in their respective firewalls or security devices, they may have prevented this particular incident from happening. So it's not just about starting with yourself, but having that awareness around the ecosystem to say, hey, we got to start sharing this information. If we want to be secure against these threat actors, we have to start sharing. The more we share, the more secure we become.
There is this thing about companies usually wanting to sweep bad news under the rug. Again, because of bad name, for whatever reason, right? And in this case, set it this out.
No, actually, your question is right. How do we incentivize sharing? Right? And if you ask me, that's really good topic, and it's a relevant issue because organizations are afraid to share, and the reason why they're afraid to share is number one, stigma. Or if I share, does it give the impression that I'm no good, right? Does it give the impression that my competitors are better than me? No, it merely shows that you have come to the level of maturity where you accept that breaches can and will happen. And like I've said before in a conference, there's two types of companies. The ones that know that they've breached, or the ones that really have no clue about it. So in that instance, number one, raise your hand and say, yes, I've been breached and I've worked to improve myself. I'll give you an example. Microsoft. Everyone knows in the industry that Microsoft is one platform that has been thoroughly tested. You have so many vulnerabilities, so many issues related to the platform to a point where now people who've used Microsoft would say, hey, this platform is fairly secure. They've made a lot of decisions to strengthen the platform, and it's not as easy as how it was before to break into, say, a Microsoft server. Provided it's properly secured, you have all the right defaults turned on, good to go, right? Second thing is stigma. We have to start incentivizing organizations to step up and say, I have been breached. And I've been breached because of this. We're going to continue to further strengthen. And that's also because a lot of organizations have not paid attention to cybersecurity. The mindset is, I'm too small for these guys to come after me. I probably don't have anything that they want, right? Like, for example, the Panama Papers, a lawyer's office got hacked. And as a result, Saw a whole lot of revelation come out of those Monseca papers. So incentivizing breaches to say that, sorry, not incentivizing breaches, but incentivizing reporting breaches so that organizations don't get punished for breaches. And of course, the third part is we have to have regulations to ensure that organizations take accountability and say, hey, I've been breached. I know I've been breached. This is what I can say so far. I'll come back in 30 days and I'll give all the information. In the meantime, we will work with the relevant authorities. We will release the IOCs so that everyone else can start looking at the networks and can start securing it.
I think it depends on the perceived business benefits to reporting. If companies are sure that, if they report, it will do them more good than harm, both tangible and intangible, then they would be more likely to be the first one to do it, or to step out and report and own up that they have been victims of a breach or anything like that.
So if you look at the situation of FireEye and what happened to them, they own up because there's two particular reasons. Number one, they're a cybersecurity company, and there's a huge impact to all their customers. So if they sweep this under the carpet and someone finds out, imagine what will happen to their reputation. There's visible reputation damage into what their systems are, whether someone would even trust. I mean, they're a cybersecurity company. Would you trust your critical infrastructures being protected by them, right? It's going to be a question. So in this instance, if you ask me, the PR person, the management of the company made the right decision by disclosing. Secondly, they have an obligation under SEC filing to ensure that they disclose. So which means from a regulatory perspective, they are compelled to disclose. The question is, how much do they disclose? Do they disclose the bare minimum, or do they disclose everything material? So in this instance, I believe they disclosed everything that's important. They could have said that, yeah, there were some scripts that were taken, but we don't think that's important. And to be fair to them, those scripts are already available on their GitHub page. So you can download those scripts. So it's nothing out of the ordinary that they have. They probably have one or two scripts that is probably in beta stage that's not published. So in that instance, would it make much of a difference? Probably not, right? They can say, yeah, we don't do this. But they went step ahead and they said, we're a responsible security company. We want to make sure that everyone is safe and secured. So we're publishing all the IOC rules so that everyone can protect themselves. Take these ERR rules, run it in your network. If you see something funny, you know what to do. Then most likely it's the same attackers that's there. But in reality, not many organizations are keen in doing this. Like, for example, in this instance, we see the reports specifically on February. Because this bit of information wasn't picked up, so no one knew that this particular data was sold a year earlier. And to be honest, no one knows if the data was obtained any time earlier. From what we see in the posting, we see March 2020, which means the breach must have occurred way before that, or maybe right after that. I mean, the monetization wasn't much, like it was only about USD $900 pittance for 380,000 data sets. I guess the price was low because it's probably Malaysia, unfortunately.
Nigel's question is like, what about MCMC or Bank Negara? Do payment gateways fall under them?
I guess payment gateways may not fall directly, but most likely indirectly. So I would quote an example of, say, a merchant terminal. You're a merchant that uses a terminal, and someone uses a fraudulent card on your machine, buys a nice pair of suit, just say for 1,000 ringgit, walks away with a suit, right? Now, what has happened is you have a deposit to say that this particular merchant terminal, I've put in this much a deposit to the bank so that the banks, if at any instance, can actually claw back the amount. right? So in this instance, what will happen is that if that's only one-off incident, then probably some settlement can happen, and the bank will do the necessary both to protect the customers as well as the merchant. But if that particular merchant, say for example, has repeated number of fraudulent transactions, then most likely the merchant may be, they might be more aware with what transaction that happens to the merchant and take the necessary action. So it really depends on the approach of how the licensing is. Some are licensed directly, some are licensed indirectly. So for example, I can still have a license with, say, a particular bank, and I can offer payment services. Or I can clear with the banks directly. The only thing is how much limit I have with the bank. Say if I'm an e-commerce site and I work with a particular bank, they give me access to their payment gateway, then I can say that, oh, my limit is not going to be more than 1,000 ringgit a day. I sell 20 ringgit, 30 ringgit, so my limit is not more than 1,000 ringgit a day. So your transaction is capped at that. But if I'm a payment gateway, say like ePay or any other payment gateways, then my limit may be higher because I may have more concurrent transactions that hits the system. And I need to have more protections in place. So for example, if you look at PCI DSS requirements, then I need to make sure if I hold any credit card information, I must have sufficient protection. Whether it's in part or in full, there are different kinds of prescriptive requirements that PCI DSS mandates for a payment gateway to actually have the right levels of control. So yes, depending on who's looking at it, you can say that someone definitely will be involved. It will either most likely be your upstream bank, or in this case, if it has something to do with credit card information, then PCI DSS, PCI Council may be involved directly.
Interesting. We wanted to talk about the ePay breach, and we also even covered about the importance of reporting about the breach.
Thanks for joining us this week on SecurityLah. Make sure to visit our website at securitylah.asia, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show.